Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This video is going to be about the second part of the sculpt for the three Marx brothers here. Groucho on the left there, Chico in the middle, and Harpo on the right. So the first thing I want to recommend to everybody who's watching this has been the best piece of advice that I gave myself. Write a painting plan of some description. Just have an idea of what you want to do. Have some ideas written down of things you might want to try. Have some ideas written down of things you will want to try. And I did this, and it helped me so much because sometimes I have a tendency to get overwhelmed on a project like this when there's so many different things to do. If I don't list off particular ones, I get stuck. Anyway, so I'm mixing up some new Tamiya epoxy putty for this second sculpt. Roughly equal parts green stuff, or the green color and white color. And I'll cut ahead to when that stuff's mixed. So after it's all mixed up, I got to work on the piano. I drew some arrows on it so you guys could see where I'm building out first. The painting plan had a lot, or in this case, the building plan had a lot of different options. I wanted to start with this one because I knew it was easy, and also because it's a big piece, it'll need a little bit more time to cure, or at least I figure it must. I'm not sure if that's actually true, but we'll go with it. So I'm starting by building out the piece, and then I'll move on to the next piece whenever this guy is fully shaped out. My thinking here is to just kind of roughly hand shape it into the basic shape of a piano, and flatness is the other goal here. Flatness on the bottom, just roughly, because I'll then sand it smooth. Once the piano's all shaped out and I had pushed enough material that I was comfortable that it was both thick enough that it would stand up to any deformation as it cured, but also the correct distance, what I did was I got a little hand cream and I got the part wet and I just dipped it in the hand cream and then spread it around on the work surface. The thinking here is that the hand cream won't dry out as fast as water, and if the part cures while touching the work surface, it might stick. So the goal is to keep it from sticking. Get it nice and gloopy. So the next step is to follow up on those canes. Last video I showed you how I made that little stem there out of the resin. After I made that though, I had the realization, why don't I just make some more out of toothpicks? It's a cheaper material and I can just whittle them to size. So I cut a few different lengths and just slowly but surely whittled them down. This work surface being wet wasn't really very helpful to me. I just hadn't thought to clean it up beforehand, so that's what I would recommend to anyone watching this. If you're working with different materials, make sure the surface is in the right condition for what you want to work in. If you want to work in wood, you probably don't want everything soaking wet. Once I'd gotten a couple pieces to the rough size that I wanted, and I had a few different options, I started placing them on the body of Harpo in different configurations, just testing out different ways to see what I would like. It took me a little while to figure out this option. With all the stuff I'd given him and with all the paint ideas I had for his chest there, it was a difficult choice. Once I decided on a rough position, I glued the 3 sticks into place. Then I let the glue dry before working on the next part of Harpo here, which is going to be those little horns on the tops of his canes. So back to the piano. I wanted to show you how it sets up after a few hours. This is about 3.5, 4 hours, I'd say. and it's still pliable. It still very much pushes and bends when I press on it, but it has set up enough that I can actually just not worry that I'm going to push it out of the way, if that makes sense. So what I'm going to do here is sand off the front. I wanted to check for a few reasons. A, I wanted to create a level edge for when I was building out the front of the keys. And second, I wanted to feel happy that I could be able to sand this after I'd finished building out the rest of the piece. Next here, I'm bouncing back to Harpo. He had a hole under his neck that I hadn't noticed. But when I was moving him around under different light, I realized that the head and the neck joint didn't really fit together properly. So I rolled up a really thin little ball of the putty and stuck it up under his neck and just kind of spread it back and forth until it all stuck in. At first it kind of looked like he was wearing a weird scarf, but then eventually it came out looking okay. So now I got another musical instrument going, in particular a trumpet for Harpo. I'm gonna stick this on his back when it's all done. But at first here, my method is just gonna be to create a little tiny ball of the putty and stick it on top of the trumpet and kind of squish it on the sides to make sure it sticks. And then I just push my knife in it in two spots to create three little keys with two little gouges. And I'll show you the final product here. It kind of works. I'm going back to Harpo here, particularly the balls on the ends of his canes, the bulbous part of the horns. You might notice that the keen-eyed viewers will notice that Groucho does not appear very often in these videos. That's for two reasons. And actually, that's just for one reason, excuse me. There's two things to say about that, rather. The first is that he will be appearing soon. I did drop Groucho, and part of him broke. His arm broke off. So I'm going to have to pin it back on, and I'll show you guys how I'm pinning his arm in. But the reason he doesn't really appear very often is that Groucho he's a joke comedian. He does all of his jokes. They're all spoken word jokes. Harpo's a prop guy, and Chico is he's a man of mixed talents, but Groucho is all spoken word jokes, so he doesn't get a lot of detailing. That said, I did give him a souped up eyeglass, which you'll see throughout the painting part of the project. So, with courage, patience, and grit, I slowly worked it into the correct shape, and I made it there. I had to do it 2 more times, so it was slow going, but I eventually did it. And you can see all the 3 of his balls soon in the final paint project. So next, it's back to the piano, this gargantuan project. I am doing a little side here, so I created one really long strip, and my goal is to fit it along the side and kind of crimp it in like a pie crust kind of. Then I have an open space in the middle that I'm going to fill with a filler material, in this case aluminum foil that I folded up into small little squares and I glued in layers. So once I was happy with how crimped in the sides were, I decided to clip out the remaining material. Although it would have been enough to make a backboard for the keys, I felt like I wouldn't be able to, I would compromise the structural integrity if I were to build it now, so I was going to leave it for later. So now that I am well rested and I've had enough cute, I am going to build that back piece. My thinking here was to cut a piece that's a little bit longer than the sides of the piano itself, and then I'm going to fit it in and use that extra little bit of length as a back piece to make it a little bit stronger along its back. Although I've consistently had fun with this project, I think this was the part of it that was actually getting really fun for me, because I was actually starting to really clearly see a piano coming out of this. It was starting to take shape, and I think when the project gets to that point, it really helps get you. It helps give you that burst of energy to get you to the end. Oh, hey, don't look at that. That's a secret for later. So I'm working on the piano here, and I'm gonna fill in that inner space. And I've chosen tinfoil. My thinking here is cheap. I have lots of it. It's pretty light, and it folds real easy. One thing I did not consider, even with this new fancy camera angle that I was trying out, was how reflective this stuff was. I tried to use the more non-reflective side just to make it a little easier on the camera, but gosh darn, it's like we're all sunning. Love you, Pops. So with all those small little squares folded and glued down, I made up some more putty and just squished it over the top and mashed it into all the little crevices. My goal was to create an entirely smooth surface. It's pretty easy, pretty quick. Sadly, my first take of this footage got corrupted, so I'll show you it on another piece. I'll show you how I did the keys for the piano here. So my method was to roll out a piece, fit it into the space, and squeeze it in there at the edges, and then I just pressed my knife in to create those keys. So I started out with a little sausage of my epoxy, rolled it out to roughly the length I was going to use. This piece I'm using to show you how I did it is on an old piece of sprue. So I'm laying it across the sprue and checking that it fits to length, and then I fold it down over the edge. That's how I get that like key on the front effect. And then I just tried to press my knife in on equidistance. Now I don't know how many keys pianos have. I have a feeling it's 52. I'm not sure if that's right. I know it's probably wrong because that's a deck of cards. So I didn't count how many I was pushing in, nor did I try and create the difference in the key size between the smaller keys that are black and the larger keys that are white. My goal is to create that effect with paint. I'm going to try and make sure the part is white and then use a black wash in between the keys to create the effect. So even though I made this material earlier and it has cured already, I can actually still go in with my knife and clean up those earlier cuts. There are little gouges in the piece, so I can just go in there and just try and scrape out any additional material that I can without tearing the piece off now that it's dried. Next is sanding and scraping and sanding and scraping. So the next detail I wanted to work on now that the piano was smooth and looking like a piano was a little music stand. I wanted to do a couple other things just to really make it clear that it was a piano. So a music stand right above the keyboard and a few legs were the final stages I was going to go with. So for the music stand, I rolled out a little piece, and first I decided I was going to cut it square, and then I used all the scraps to build up a little blob of material behind it, and stood the stand up on that. Then I just treat it like a delicious pie crust and crimp all of the edges into the piece, both of the music stand and the backing piece, just to try and make sure everything's stable. The final piece came out a little floppy, but thankfully it kind of works with the aesthetic, so happy accidents and all that. The other detail I wanted to add was legs. I wanted different lengths of legs too, to imply the idea that they'd been, broken and smashed up as time had progressed. In the end, I cut 4 legs of, I'd say, 2.5 different lengths. Not really possible, but you'll see what I mean in a sec. On the final piece, I only went with 3 legs. I liked the idea of one of them being straight up broken off, and one of the legs didn't really come out right, so it worked. With the legs cut, I used that bit of hand cream on my hand there to lay out a gloopy surface, and I let them cure there overnight. Next, on to fixing one of my oopsies. So here's Groucho. His details are hard to make out because he's based mostly black right now, but I dropped him and he broke. I snapped off his right hand that was holding his gun and the bayonet on the gun. So first what I did was I pulled out the piece I was using to pin him because it was getting in my way for this process, and it's okay, it's the bottom of his foot, it'll cover it up. So first I drill a small hole into the larger of the 2 pieces because it's more stable. Then I'm gonna take a piece of my 1mm wire and pin it into the hole with super glue. Once that's dried, I drill the other piece in the same spot. Then when I clip the wires, I put some more glue on the other piece and I can put them together, and the bond will be far stronger than if it was just 2 little flat pieces. As another final touch-up detail, I found this little pocket pair of pouches, and I decided that Harpo should have it. He's the prop guy, so give him a lot of toys. The last detail on Harpo here was to glue down his trumpet. Then I got to start working on the last couple things on that piano there. So by this time the legs had cured, so I got to work gluing those down, and then after that I started work on the barbed wire. For anyone wondering, it isn't sharp at all. It is just one wire wrapped around another. So I don't think you could cut yourself with it. You can poke yourself real good. But I just wrapped it around a few times until I was satisfied with the look, tucked in the end, and spread a little bit of glue over some of the points on the chain where it connected the most. And there you have it, guys. You'll get to see them more up close in the future during the painting videos. For now, I've just got them outside because I'm getting ready to base coat them, and then they'll be good to go. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. I hope people have learned something, and anyone out there who's planning on turning their Ogryn into the Marx Brothers, I hope this was a helpful guide. If you enjoyed, please subscribe for more. I'm going to try and keep doing these videos pretty regularly. And comment. I'd love to get some feedback, what you guys think, ideas on what you guys would like to see me build. Have a good one, and sleep well, everybody.